Good day, brothers and sisters. Did you sign up for the show? Did you subscribe? Did you click the like? Did you share it? Yes, you did. And we're very grateful. Thank you so much. And this is another one of those shows that we cannot get enough of it, and we are part of the resistance. Let me ask you this question. Trans women are women, right? Of course, it's rhetorical, but let me ask you another one. Can trans women, which is man, can they breastfeed? You know, like in the medical, trust science, they told us in the last few years, right? And that science has changed multiple times. And now it's changing again. We'll have first of all, we have an infinite amount of genders, right? My gender is the 8-year-old Asian girl, so my pronouns is 8AG. Is it what is it? Yes, that's what my pronoun is. So let's get straight to the point. This lady on Fox News, her name is Glenn. What is her name? Judge right?
Jeanine.
Let's watch her video right off the bat.
They just need to take a bunch of different drugs in order to do so, like an anti-nausea drug that's said to induce lactation as a side effect. Now, the Daily Mail reached out to multiple doctors and experts who say these drugs haven't been subjected to rigorous studies, aren't cleared by the FDA, and may have life-altering effects on the baby. Now, according to the FDA, one of the drugs can pass into milk in small amounts and sometimes give a baby an irregular heartbeat. So, the FDA is against it, but the CDC says go right ahead. This is the same CDC that told you that you can't use ivermectin to treat COVID because it's horse medicine. But when it comes to pushing the trans agenda, they don't seem to care as much about using drugs for experimental purposes. And while the scientific community has stopped following the science, the media has stopped following the English language. So this morning, CBS invited a guest promoting a feminine hygiene brand. But sorry, it's not for women, it's for menstruators.
Periods make human life possible.
Yes.
It's potentially one of the most natural biological processes of life, and yet history and society has built up this stigma that makes menstruators feel so ashamed. But also wanting a period...
Okay, Glenn, take it away.
Well, welcome to the Comedy Hour. This is the funnest part of our segment here, making fun of today's modern-day reality. The ridiculousness just doesn't stop. And you know what? Kudos to them because they give us our material.
Andre, welcome back to our show. And you're a guest of honor. We're always happy to have you here. I know that's your favorite subject because I know you looked into it for personal reasons. We're not going to disclose why.
I'm still confused. I'm just beyond confused.
But it's been pushed on us, shoved down our throats in the last few years in terms of like what she mentioned with ivermectin and all this other stuff. So obviously all those reasons, sometimes, we're going to post that show on YouTube, so I can't really talk openly about all the things I think it's for, but it's obviously ridiculous, right?
It's a low-hanging fruit to further divide the population with everything else that they got is going as narratives, and it's real low-hanging fruit. Unfortunately, it preys on some of us that are not at our optimal, and obviously, judging by the age demographic, this is targeted at is it's kind of pernicious. It's kind of I don't know, going after the youth or just people that are already sensitive or have different types of mental issues is. It's dark all the way.
You said you started off by saying you were confused because it's confusing. Well, that's their agenda, is to try and confuse. But no, Andre is not confused at all. He just said that. When you talk to Andre off the camera, he tells you exactly what he's thinking. So you know what? We're going to bring that a little bit more out right now. Let it roll.
Appreciate that.
So if women are menstruators, right? That's what this lady referred to, or the birthing people, or whatever they're ridiculous. We can't just call them women anymore because it's racist. What are men then?
They've been deconstructing us for at least over a decade with toxic masculinity, and I get where that comes from. So at this point, that Matt Walsh with what is a woman, I think it would be a nice follow-up to see what is a man.
Glenn, here you go. That's an idea. That's what we should do. We should do a whole series on what is a man.
I think we were talking about bringing that up, right? The man channel, the real man
it's coming
channel.
soon. It's coming soon.
Motivation and mentorship for the modern man, which modern men it needs a lot to be desired because, boys, I don't know what's happened, but to allow all this stuff that's happening in the media and, you know, to not want to come out and say anything against it because you know it's ill, it's sick, and for the fear that you might be in conflict. Men are not supposed to be have these fears, or even when you do have a fear, you go ahead regardless of it because you absolutely have to go towards what is the right.
And we're joking about this, brothers and sisters, but that's no laughing matter. This is mental illness. If at any point you think that's okay for the man to breastfeed a newborn baby and that somehow you don't see nothing wrong with that picture, and I'm not even, okay, so and you don't even see the whole pedophile component of that, or just I don't know, I don't know what level, if it's not a pedophile thing, it's some totally different derangement that if you don't see it, you need to go see a doctor, but the proper doctor, not the doctor who's going to try to cut off your junk after the 30 minutes talking to you, or 17 minutes or 15 minutes, how long it takes for them to determine that you need $1 million surgery, reconstructive surgery, to give you some hormones and cut off your junk and make a woman out of you. By the way, they have been making a woman out of you with all your toxic masculinity. Okay, Riley Gaines, guys, let's get straight to the Riley Gaines thing. Do you know who Riley Gaines is, Andre?
Yeah, she was that swimmer that lost out on her small, limited window of opportunity that she trained her life for in swimming, if I'm not mistaken, through, I forget.
University of Pennsylvania, right? She was competing against...
what was the name of this one?
Leah Thomas.
Leah Thomas, and her swinging drunk in the locker room, and how they were kind of gaslit into acquiescing to the narrative. But in the meantime, I don't know if her scholarship was affected, but her ranking definitely was. And then after that, well, her whole kind of life took a left turn, unwantingly.
But she's milking it now, right, Glenn?
Yeah, she's probably happier like this. Now she's scoring. And this is the whole point of going to school, is to, have a future for yourself. So she just hooked on to reality, and she found her purpose in life to expose all the stupidity that's going on out there. Just, it's one thing, it's a shame. It's you're starting to notice more and more women coming forward. And I'm saying, where are the men? What, they're going to get behind the women who are starting to speak the truth? Oh, you go, girl. I'm going to be behind you. When in the history of humanity has this ever happened?
I'm glad you mentioned the purpose, life purpose specifically. I mean, before we show her, on the video in her latest rant regarding the subject that we discussed, talking about specifically breastfeeding, man breastfeeding children, finding your purpose, life purpose specifically, is important. And it's beyond anything. And again, it's an existential question. Why are we here? Right? But again, continue to watch our show, and maybe you'll learn something about this, learn about your spirit experience, human experience of your spirit here on earth. But let's go straight to Riley Gaines. I like her video here.
The longest time I refrained from posting on TikTok. I'm the swimmer who competed against Leah Thomas, who has been outspoken on why men should not be competing in women's sports or changing in our locker rooms. But after what I saw today on Twitter, I will be blasting my opinions and my views on all of my social media platforms, because this is sick, and I think a true testament of where, as Americans, we are today. Okay, so I came across this picture yesterday on Twitter, which is very clearly a man who is claiming the identity of a woman and breastfeeding a child. After seeing that picture,
By the way, Glenn is turning his head away from the screen.
Oh, she said this is a man. So really? You're going to put that in the same category as the G-man? I don't think so. That's not a man. That's a nutcase.
very quickly took to my Twitter to call that what it is, which is sexual abuse of a child. But I didn't realize to what degree until I saw this. In the following photos, you will see the same man who was breastfeeding the child actively using nipple clamps to fulfill his sexual fetish. Here is another one. And here is another one. And here is the Instagram caption from the same man on his Instagram profile where he wanted to check on how hard you can tug on the nipple clamps. So I guess what I'm wondering is, how can any sane human being see this man posing with this child, obviously sucking on his nipple, now seeing what he engages in privately, and not see this baby as an erotic?
A masochist, psycho, transgender woman. I mean, what level of insanity do you want to get into? First of all, transgender women, by nature, there's no such thing. There's a guy who may think he's a woman, but a chick, but he's not. It'll never be. It goes against the laws of nature. And every time men do that, they always come out the short end of the stick. You would think they would learn by now, but no, dumb as a rusty nail.
Andre. Well, Andre. Okay, I'm lost for words, but I'm lost for words, because we allow this. That's the point. I think what you're bringing up, like, we can't define this how we want to define this. But if we continue to encourage this kind of behavior and say, oh my God, yes, he's a transgender, trans women are women. No, mentally ill people are mentally ill people. And we, the ones who are allowing this thing, we had this thing to allow to happen. It obviously started many years ago. And okay, I'm going to go into the spiritual realm. First thing they did by destroy the family, but it started slowly. They just one notch down, right? So you have this whole concept of good, better, best. So the devil's not trying to take you down from your best down to the depths of hell. He's just trying to take you from the best to a little bit less. So what they did first, they empowered women to divorce. Like, instead of trying to work out the things at the house, and obviously if you're being beat up by your husband and all that stuff, there's probably no solution. But modern women right now, it's easily done. Like, usually this, you want to get divorced? Okay, just leave. Not work it out, not this. Second thing is they destroyed men, then they destroyed family altogether, and now they're attacking your children, right? And that's how they're controlling and destroying society, by compartmentalizing brains of your children, because they're run by the single parent home, usually a mother. And by usually I mean like 90% of the households. And they want this. And they want this because when you remove the father from the family, that's what happens. Yeah, Glenn, what's up?
As we were discussing before the show started, fundamentally, we're all spiritual beings having a human experience. We all agree on that. And a being like that doesn't have a gender. Okay, so but when you, by nature, it comes into the 3D, the physical world, then the nature assigns you the gender. So now you're born, you don't assign yourself an gender. Okay, that's an agenda. You are the way nature, the way you were born, and that's it, that's all. But this, what's going on today, this perpetual sickness, this mainstreaming abomination, so that they want everybody to believe that normal people are the one who have the problem. This is ridiculous, only because the vast majority of people who are normal are quiet about it. But it's time that when you see sick stuff like this and targeting children, and it's going on, and what's the next level, and what's going to be the next level? What, we have to get accustomed to this, we have to get accustomed to that? Oh, it's only normal this. Normal compared to what? If we look at the way we were, the way we are today, just even 5 years ago, like you were saying, and the way we are today, who would ever have thought that? It's sick.
Yeah, I think we're seeing symptoms of we spoke about this in the past, but the environmentalists from 10, 15 years ago were becoming aware what's in our environment and how that's chemically altering the species and the men in the human species and in other species. And like I was saying initially, I think it's just preying on the low-hanging fruit. People are just not aware. People are not conscious, and they're prone to victimization and wanting to have these victimizations confirmed for them. And we're mentioning dimensions and spirituality, and there's a reason for the principles, the 7 principles, the Kabbalion principles, being mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, and the last one is gender. And there's a reason it's there. And I believe that this is the ignorance they're preying on the spiritual being, and locking him in the material world and into victimization, and then obviously going through with certain procedures that are kind of permanent and not really possible to reverse is a sad part of the modus operandi. Again, we're only seeing it in this society. I'm sure you guys are going to cover some of the other jurisdictions where they don't have this issue, either from when it became legal here and or when it was covered in the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistic Manual for Mental Health, and depending on when you want to go cherry pick the versions and when they address this. But again, speaking now of the symptoms, it would be to not acknowledge what we should have foreseen coming over a decade ago when we started altering the epigenetics and the alchemy of the humans.
Oh, okay. So let's straight to this video. This is supposed to be somehow cute.
He
guys.
finds the best videos by far. All the time. It's amazing.
This is supposed to be cute and heart throbbing.
Check out the lad on the right.
Is it a lead? So this is the video of a newborn child being adopted by, and you may say there's nothing wrong with this. What's wrong with this? They're just gay people and they just want to have children too because they're probably legally married somewhere in the Western society. And how dare you to judge them? Why can't they have a family? Why can't they have a baby? Well, I agree with you. Why can't they? I guess if they are, if it's a normal, healthy family and there's no mental issue. Here, by the way, Glenn and Andre, you can argue with me on that. Here in our society, we have the Child Protective Services, right, Glenn? And for some reason, if somebody snitches on you and say, "Oh, this guy is a bad parent," or those families are bad, they don't vaccinate their children, they don't let them watch their TV, they take them to church. They must be mentally ill.
Yeah, you become a target,
you
right,
become
brother?
a target, right?
Yeah, right away. The government goes after you for being a good parent because somebody else is pointing the finger at you, and you don't want to be part of the agenda and the narrative that's playing out in real time.
But you see this thing everywhere, and that's not only condoned but promoted.
Well, I don't see it too much, but I thank you for bringing it up, I guess. But, it's a strange thing that's going on here in the West. You have so many women fighting for, abortions, my body, my choice, They have no problem killing off a potential human being, and then you have people who don't do that, but they have children. They can't even take care of themselves, so they end up giving their children up to adoption. And here you are, you had the two guys there. Oh, look, they're waiting in line to how against nature do you want to be? What? There's going to be the mommy in the relationship? One of them is going to try and breastfeed the child. Like, what is that? Now, that poor kid, that's a form of sexual abuse. Like the
videos we just played before.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of evidence, brothers and sisters, that those children are victims of abuse from the start in a very sick way. That's basically sex trafficking coupled with the child abuse at once. So, okay, right here, Glenn, like we have a story right here.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons why Putin wouldn't allow Americans to adopt the Russian babies anymore, because he says that the children are being sexually abused. It's for crazy people over there.
Just earlier this year, we covered this story. A gay couple charged with molesting their adopted son also pimped them out to pedophile ring, report claims. A gay couple from Georgia charged with molesting their two adopted sons and using them to record child porn also allegedly pimped them out to members of local pedophile ring, according to disturbing new report. A month-long investigation by Town Hall revealed that William Dale Zalak, 33, and Zachary Jacob Zalak, 35, allegedly used social media to prostitute their two elementary age sons. And now, this is mental illness. And obviously, you don't need this article to know it. And if you need to go to sources like this, remember the Pride and Kink, Kill Children and Kink video we played a few days ago, how this thing on TikTok was trying to tell us that, it's okay, it's acceptable to have children at Pride, and there's nothing wrong, and she used the word kink, where we call perversion, subversion of sexual subversion of children, minors, etc., to whatever deranged behavior that you're exposing. That's disgusting. There's no other words to describe it. But again, Glenn, we talk about the parents, we talk about everything. I know it's a World Economic Forum and forced behavior and all those things, and they try to destroy the West by doing things like this, or the Western culture.
The West's going to fight back. The men have had enough. Come on, brothers, let's unite. Let's help some of the girls who are doing the job that we should be doing. I want to ask the panel here, the boys, what should be the penalty for these guys being convicted of that?
Wood chipper. Wood chipper. It's only here in this society that we actually having this conversation. It's just so far-fetched. It's unbelievable. It stems from issues, mental issues and whatnot. Then it leads to criminality. I'm 42. I'm still working on childhood traumas that lead to certain kinks, or you're driven
that
towards.
Explains it.
But at the end of the day, doing that conscious shadow work, I'm from 80s and 90s, and I can't even imagine today what it's like for these kids, like having to have the genetic memory of sucking on my dad's breast. Like I can't imagine how, and it's just going to be very interesting to keep
Glenn, remember
witnessing.
I said this. It's a lost generation.
No, some of it is.
Some of it, not all, but
that's
not,
right.
not
The
all
whole
of it.
generation.
Not the whole
can't do that.
generation.
We have to bring on the brothers and sisters who are not part of this, and that will become apparent that it's a lot more people than what the mainstream media is trying to show. No, we're not for this. This is a select few of people. And you said before you had a little bit of childhood trauma that affected you. All good men have had serious adversities in their life. That's what makes a good man. The ability to be able to go over these adversities and win one adversity at a time.
Agreed.
And like Peterson, right? They would say like it's to have that beast inside of you, but able to control that beast. That's what makes you a dangerous man.
Yeah, if you're not capable of violence, you're harmless, not peaceful.
Okay, that's it. Let's move on to show this degeneracy.
Thanks for joining. Today we're at Pride, London. We're going to find out if the community feels that Pride has been hijacked.
In my opinion, there's no such thing as too much visibility. I think as a queer person, it makes me happy to go into an institution, whether it's a bank, whether it's in a hospital, wherever that institution may be, to see pride flags being celebrated and visibility being drawn upon the queer community.
Just in the thought of being visible, at what sort of age do you think we should introduce children to Pride? What do you think would be reasonable?
As early as possible.
As early as possible?
Yeah, and I don't think sexuality should be something that children should be kind of protected from.
What do you think?
Pedophile?
Without even outside this context, on a principle ideological, pride should never be celebrated. Like, regardless of what it is, it's a 7 deadly sin. But at the end of the day, it's not a good trait. It's not something people should indulge in. It's not something you should impose on others. It's not something you should encourage. Be aware of it and try to have it under control and maintain composure towards pride. It's not something that should be introduced to children. It's this war of ideology. It's going to be very interesting to see it come to head as far as these basic principles. What would their constitution read like? Like we already have these rights protecting, or obviously we're not feeling like they're sufficient, and people get it confused as far as this is my natural given right. No, the social construct of tangible constitutions and the rights and freedoms embedded in them. It's going to be very interesting over the next 5-10 years to see how this is going to evolve. And again, people lean back on these original social contracts that we have with one another. I just can't see where exposing children to the most recent pride celebrations as if there should be celebrated. We had men naked in front of children, literally at eyeball height to them is their genitalia. And it's just...
Or whatever's left of their genitalia. Maybe they're halfway through the operation. But, even the play on words, pride,
Well,
that mean something that you're really proud of? That's a victory in your life? How small do you want to be? How petty are you in this world?
Maybe celebrate something you tangibly do, something you create, not something, I don't know. They're very stuck in the material aspect of life and putting labels onto things and then being prideful about.
But it's also celebrating the trauma, right? So that's what it is. Like I'll show you that in a second. Let's just watch a little bit of this video.
Would be a reasonable age, a sensible age to introduce all this sort of stuff to children in the school setting. I'm talking about.
What age would you discuss any sexual aspects or relationship aspects with children?
I wouldn't.
At that age?
Yeah, I wouldn't.
You wouldn't ever talk to children about relationships?
Not until at least 12, probably something like that.
Okay, but you know, I'm sure you're a man of the world. You know that 12's quite old, really.
If someone said they had
What does it mean, guys?
You're a man of the world and 12 is quite old, really?
What he is describing, that is the worldly thing to do that we talk about. This bloke dressed like a nun. Okay, so where is that going? Okay, let's see this.
concerns for educating children about LGBTQ plus issues at a young age.
That's transphobia.
That's transphobic.
Guys, congratulations. Both of you are transphobic, and all of this is microaggression towards me, or towards everyone, really.
Depends on how you identify, hey, Alex?
Is that how I identify? Well, this is to protect me from the community. I'm part of you guys. I'm microaggressed too.
Yeah? Do you think we should educate children on LGBTQ plus issues and matters?
I think as long as I think any age really, as long as the child is ready, I think any age.
As long as the child is ready?
I think so. I think it's important to promote and to encourage people to come out and be themselves.
At what age do you think we should...
So if you're a crackhead, you should be encouraged to be yourself anywhere in front of your children. It's a good thing, right?
As much as that person didn't look rational, I tend to agree with, as long as the child is asking. It's the grooming aspect. It's the bringing it up for the first time. It's putting it in their heads that I believe is the abuse. If you cannot, lie to a child if they come up and ask you specific questions, that should be the right time to introduce whatever question they're asking about.
As a parent.
Oh yeah, 100%. Anybody else?
Key.
Yes. Not the state, not a stranger, not a drag queen, not during drag queen hour. And obviously, if you take your child to drag queen hour, that's going to bring up a bunch of questions that a lot of other people will be happy to answer for your child. But when a child normally asks, regardless of the age, because we all have our different times in life or different learning curves, and that should be maybe the time where it's introduced in the child's thought process, not beforehand, not glorifying it, not putting them into a festive mood or into a horny mood or setting, as we keep seeing with stuff like this or events like this, or more darkly the criminals that you were mentioning before, as far as pimping out their children to their network.
Andre, do you know why it's done? I'll explain to you. Well, so we have this whole MK Ultra thing going on here. We investigated and we interviewed Metro Stein here, the lawyer who sued FBI and McGill and Al-Anon for MK Ultra experiments on peoples and their families. And what they were looking into, original study was into compartmentalizations of the brain associated with the trauma. Right, so when the brain gets compartmentalized, you can plant any kind of thing into it to recall it later on in the day. Sort of like Manchurian Candidate will be the extreme of that. But you can also make useful slaves. You can use trigger words like climate change. You can use trigger words like terrorism. You can use, any kind of other fear trigger words like plain gimmick and pandemic or vaccinated or whatever it is. So they basically, when they're doing things like this, when they're traumatizing kids at the young age, they creating perfectly programmed robots for the future. The people that we refer to as NPCs, unfortunately, they're not NPCs, but because of the trauma, the way their brain and nervous system functions, they're easily controlled and manipulated and programmed on a later day.
Yeah, I'm very. When I got knee deep in that rabbit hole, I would recommend Walter Borat's Operation Mind Control. He was the initial author that brought that book out, Operation Mind Control, touching McGill directly, Ewan Cameron, and the bypass, the cheat code using trauma, and that's why I seen on this kind of scale. they're fully aware of how the brain works and how it's configured, and that works on any human being. So the fact that now it's being done to children, but not under a traumatic way, under a celebrative, festive kind of way, by people that indirectly or directly have been traumatized in their past, which have led them to have these sexual tendencies. Some people would say deviancies, deviant, sexually deviant ways of manifesting love for other humans and whatnot. It's we're living in a really good time.
All right, let's keep watching this good video.
Educate children about LGBTQ+. From the start? From the start. So the concept, you're an engineer, the concept of sexuality, fundamentally at its core is what we're talking about. Yep. Sexual preference, who we're attracted to sexually.
Teachers should teach by example.
And I'm asking, what age do you think children should learn about LGBT stuff?
I mean, I feel like about 11, 12, when you are starting to explore your sexuality, you start to feel attraction for other sexes.
Well, they should definitely be aware. They should be aware of it as a young child, because they can see their friend who has 2 mums or 2 dads, and you don't want them to be discriminated against. You want them to know that everyone's welcome.
But would it not make more sense if your child has a friend who has 2 mums to then bring that up? Is there any need to tell all? Because my position is one that I don't see it sensible to bring to the forefront of a child's mind the idea of sexuality.
I feel like it is important though.
Primary school though.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. There's no issue with it because it is just sexuality.
No, I don't think that's their intention.
It's a good video. I'll post the link somewhere.
Yeah.
But the point is, the word that you heard in the last minute, sexuality. And it is what I'm talking here all the time. If you're an adult and you've made a choice about your sexual practice, your sexual preference, and you like to go on porn sites and swinger clubs and pride parades or whatever, it's your choice. I don't have to agree with your choices, but I honor them because that's your free will, right? But when we're talking about sexualization of the children, that's what you're going to celebrate publicly at those pride events. Your sexuality or your perverse sexuality in some way, right? So if you are doing that and you're exposing my children to it, then we're having a problem. And you tell me, well, your children don't belong to you, and then we're going to this whole communist thing. Yeah, that's why the children have been taken out of the family, and that's why family is being destroyed and blah, 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 all this other stuff. But at the end of the day, it is a sexualization of the children, and it leads to things like we showed you just a few minutes earlier, them being subjected, sex trafficked, because the adaptation of those kids at the young age and being shoved a male nipple in their face and then sold into pedophile rings by their gay parents, which we just showed you. This is not me being microaggressor or hate speaker. This is actual facts. It does happen. And when you're going to watch this new movie that just came out, Glenn, tell our viewers about that movie. We talk about it all the time.
The Sound of Freedom. Might be, you're going to have to spend some time searching where it's going to come out. I was looking before for Montreal. There's not a lot of big corporations that want to play this truth and reality because it might affect their woke credit scores. But it's going to open people's eyes up about the magnitude of pedophilia here in the West. That people, it's all below the radar. Some people have an inclination that there's something wrong. Almost like I have an inclination when you're watching these videos that you're showing. The common denominator of all those people being interviewed is, one, they're perverted, and secondly, they're addicted to attention. They're narcissistic. So that's a double whammy.
If I could cut in on that, check out that movie. I'll plug Rumble. I'm assuming that's the first platform people will be able to see it on. On a second note, you don't have to take it from 3 white guys. We've been taking a lot of heat lately talking about this subject. I think one of the collectives that has the most success on this is Gays Against Groomers. You can just go see that collective as far as their approach on grooming children, pride, exposing children to sexuality. So you don't have to take it from us. To the point now, there's another collective coming up, which is Age Players Against Groomers, which is an offshoot of even Gays Against Groomers, which are people that consciously partake in these games, meaning a 40-year-old woman still identifies as a 17-year-old and likes to dress like one, and her partner gets off on that, this and that. These people that are in this community at this point are denouncing these men. I find that very powerful, and I encourage people to just go look at those two different collectives and see how their take on it, because they're feeling like it's taken a hit to what they live and how they believe, recognizing it as child abuse in the end of the day.
And it's interesting, right? So we talk about how family being destroyed, and it started incrementally by, introducing divorce and blah, 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 and, detoxifying the male role model in the family. But at some point, we know for a fact that homosexuality and everything, other kind of disorders were classified as mental illness. And who ushered, Charles Silberstein, who helped delist homosexuality as a mental illness, that dies at 87. That's something that just happened recently. And again, okay, what if, I don't know, can you classify all of homosexuality as a mental illness? I don't know that. I'm not a scientist in this case. In the spiritual sense, I don't have to agree with it. I don't have to accept it. But if it's your choice, it's an adult choice, I have to honor that, because it's an adult choice, right? As long as it doesn't harm my children in any way, if you don't parade your junk in front of my children's face and you do it it's okay. We'll take, again, because if it's sexuality, Andre, let's say if I have my very beautiful girlfriend and I bring her in the middle of the park where you play with the children and start having sex with her, is that acceptable?
No, just like it wasn't acceptable to have a stripper hour story time at school for some reason. Like we recognize that, and for some reason, if a guy has a testicle hanging out of the thong, then that floats. It's just we're just in real interesting times, like people are these double standards are just very they're just, I don't know what to say. You know what I mean? Like it's getting too egregious.
Well, the point that you bring it up, you don't know what to say because we are lost for words. I don't know. Okay, we know how we got here, but the fact that is like we actually have to tell people and speak. Basically, we're part of the movement, right? Would you classify that as a part of the resistance movement, ideological resistance movements that shouldn't even happen in the first place? Why did we allowed it to get so low? Why did we allow it as men in this society? Why did we let it get away?
We let politicians politicize, and we shouldn't do that over any and everything. Given the chance, they will do that. You will give them relevance, and they will slip in the home if you give them a chance. You were mentioning before, it's natural law. Just stick to natural law, and adults are allowed to do whatever they want. Consenting adults. Children do not fit that criteria, so legally they cannot give consent. It's the reason we don't allow them in strip clubs, the reason we don't allow them in orgy clubs. But at the end of the day, that's next. You know what I mean? Like, why stop there? Like, if you take somebody from 2019 and airdrop him in 2023, try to explain to him what he's seeing, and it feels like a C movie, just something very made up, make believe. It's science fiction at this point. And how do we correct it? People are starting to realize that they're not served well by their political class, and stop allowing these people to leave. The laws are already in place as far as individual rights, and then what is considered criminal. And the fact that at Pride you could flash your junk to a child, but if you go 6 blocks down the street or 3 days after and do that to a child, you are right away on the sexual offenders list. We can't have these double standards, and that's all we've been fed for the past couple of years, from election frauds to Russiagate to a bunch. They're literally confession through projections, and it's just it's awkward, but it's, again, I'm in love with life, so watching this happen is just, it's surreal, and just I can't wait to see part 2.
Ukraine is another one. Ukraine is corrupt unless we send in money.
Ukraine is corrupt because we send in money.
You had homework to do since the last time you were here. What's your pronouns?
I can't. I didn't think about that longer than the first second you asked me.
It's okay. I'm just joking. Going back to Charles Silberstein, right? So obviously it's not obvious, but okay. If Silberstein, you don't understand, it's the Jewish last name. And again, by the way, we are not anti-Semites here, and we do not report us to Defamation League. But born in Brooklyn, New York in 1935 to Jewish parents, Silberstein was raised in an era when same-sex sexual activity was illegal, and in most parts of the United States, and expressions of homosexuality were highly stigmatized. The shame that he felt well into his adulthood and the fear of professional repercussions caused him to hide his identity and even enroll in conversion therapy. It also profoundly influenced his work as a therapist, author, and LGBTQ rights activist. Okay, so that's the guy who instrumental in removing, homosexuality from the mental illness list. And again, we're not, brothers and sisters, we're not going into the scientific debate here or everything else. But clearly, this guy specifically has a conflict of interest because he's a homosexual himself, right? He can be a subject of study, but to present his studies in a way like, okay, I don't know. I think if the person that is not a homosexual and for whatever reason removes it from the list, then that has a greater value behind that than versus this. Are you losing me on this conversation?
Well, because I'm a little confused. He went through conversion therapy, meaning he was initially a woman, or did
No,
I read that wrong?
conversion therapy means like I'm gay. I'm going to go to church. They're going to teach me how not to be gay anymore.
Okay.
So,
and he went to the church for that.
Well, I don't know where he went, but usually it's the religious organization that would do something like this.
Yeah, I don't. Well, I don't know about that as far as the conflict of interest, because who else would bring it up or fight it through? And most people I know that are pushing through law reforms or constitutional challenge are usually people that feeling victimized by a certain standard or law.
Are you feeling the victim right now is a result of, like affirmative action is a reverse, racism. So all those things that happen to the straight man, are you being discriminated against because you're not being paraded as the straight male all over the street?
Well, I think that it's in the same ballpark because that affirmative action judgment that just came through says that the people trying to invoke it or fight for it are the actual racists. They're the ones claiming that people of color don't have the same intellect, the same abilities as white people. So at the end of the day, I could make a correlation between the two.
Okay, so I don't really want to exploit it beyond because apparently though. By the way, Glenn, did you know that the second biggest, if not the first, Pride parade outside of North America is in Tel Aviv? Did you know about that?
No, I didn't know that. That wasn't on my honey to know list. Sorry about that. But,
you never made arrangements to travel to check it out for yourself?
Nope. I have no interest in wanting to care about it. That's just not the G-Man style, obviously.
Well, it's kind of fits into this whole like divide and conquer thing and like how the whole state of Israel was created, right, artificially. And that's sort of like in the middle of the Muslim Arab world kind of thing. There's Christians there too, but also the traditionally the whole this Muslim thing, and we covered in the last couple episodes. They're very traditional in terms of family and family values and still. So it would make sense to artificially bring something else on the spiritual level, and now like. They're trying to exploit, and I don't know, I need some kind of rabbinical scholars here to, you guys are welcome to come in and debate this. But apparently being homosexual or having multiple genders is part of the Jewish tradition. I mean, there's an article that I found here, and it basically, one of the rabbis insinuates that it's always been part of the Jewish tradition. Intimate relations between men existed in Jewish communities and apparently were also common. Historian Aaron Ben Nea has shown in the research that despite the explicit biblical prohibition in Jewish communities in Ottoman Empire, same-sex relations were rather common. This is indicated by dozens of sources. Moreover, until the modern era, grown men who had a need for the favors of youth did not have negative images in Jewish society. Now, we can also claim like the things like Sodom and Gomorrah existed and they were destroyed. And if it's okay, if you consider Bible to be allegorical document, not a historical document, Nevertheless, something terrible happened because of this type of behavior. And this will be a good segue, and I think we're going to close the show with this. You guys were aware that in Germany, like we know Roman Empire fell apart because they were debased, and people like Caligula, right? They sort of propagated this kind of debauchery within the midst of the society, specifically within his ruling, immediate ruling. I don't know. Did you guys ever watch the movie Caligula?
I did not.
Okay, that's a pretty sick movie. You can watch it, but.
It's basically paganism where you had orgies everywhere and just extreme compulsive disorder towards sex and worshiping false gods like money. Especially here in the West, what they do, it's all about how much money you have and how much you can buy and consume, and that makes you the top. And this is just from stinking thinking. It's manifesting to its nth degree here in the West, and we're just watching it live streaming right in front of us right now in 2023, and it's been speeding up. But personally, we tend to think it's because the Great Reset is going to be happening soon. That's why things are quickening up.
And I think actually I agree with you. I just thought about it. Maybe that's what they use. They use culmination of those sort of like installed empires for great resets. They destroy them in a certain way. So like Caligula is a good example for Roman Empire. And then, Germany, for example, this is a most recent example of this kind of thing happening. Well, beside what's happening here right now, obviously, that we're witnessing live. But historically, you don't have to go far. You just go to Germany, and the German society was also really big on what? Experimenting, pharmaceutical experiments on humans, for example, right? All those unjust wars based on tribalism. They did all this, right? And also transhumanism was a big part of German society. But that's something we don't talk about because it's not really visible, and most people have a memory of a goldfish, and most people don't remember Building 7. That was 20 years ago. Forget what happened 100 years ago. But I have a video. We can watch a little bit of that. Thank you, brothers and sisters, for watching Alex Sass show. Thank you, Andre. Thank you, Glenn, for being an amazing contributor to this discussion. You always have a lot to say. Do you want to say something else before we close it?
Just two notes that I'm aware of is Greek society. There was the mentor-protege relationship where that was not frowned upon as far as the mentor being able to have his way with the protege. And it was something that they strove for, to be able to mentorship under certain established men in the society. And I was watching Soft White Underbelly, which is a great series on YouTube, and he interviews veterans from Afghanistan, and he was saying how in Afghanistan it was very frequent that men would be having sex with young boys, and being a strict Muslim country that's founded on Sharia law, the men over there would insist that they're not homosexuals, even though they would engage regularly with sex with boys.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
point.
Soft White Underbelly. I encourage people to go look at veterans interviews on there, and Afghanistan veterans, and it's unbelievable what they reported back.
Brothers and sisters, there's 195 countries in the world. The overwhelming amount of these countries are against this, either marginally, or it is actually punishable by law, where you can go away to prison. Okay, so this is mostly the new norm, apparently, in the Western cultures, the so-called advanced civilizations. If this is an advanced civilization, boy, how far we have fallen.
Well, okay, to piggyback on what you said, so Ghanaian MPs back tougher anti-gay legislation. So we had Zimbabwe, Uganda. Who else?
Senegal, Nigeria,
yeah, Russia.
Russia. A lot of countries are against this, and they impose strict
China,
laws.
by the way, I'm pretty sure is the same thing. in some way.
Well, look, I'll give you one example about China since you brought it up, big guy. There's very little drugs in China. Why? What's the penalty for getting caught selling drugs or taking drugs in China?
Zero tolerance.
And?
Becoming a traffic mule to bring in fentanyl to U.S. Up your ass, though.
It's a little bit gay.
Punishable by death. That's a deterrent, let me tell you.
Yeah, and going with China, with that one-child policy that they had for decades over there, that's leading to this whole issue, men and women, and homosexuality as well. But I'm sure we'll hear about that a little bit more in the upcoming years.
The thing about the one-child policy that most people don't know, because that was frowned upon here in the West, but what most people don't know is, no, you could have many more children if you want, but you had to prove to the state that you had the funds and the wherewithal, the wealth, to ensure a good way of living for these children. Not like here in the West, where people who can't even take care of themselves, where they're living off the government paycheck that's coming from the taxpayers, we're paying them more to have more children when what they learn is not to be able to take care of themselves, and the state should be there to pay for them.
Thank you, Andre. Thank you, Glenn, for contributing to the show. And brothers and sisters, we're just going to finish with the little show, with the little video about trans origin stemming from Germany. It's very educational. I won't play the whole thing. I'll put a link in the description. You can watch it for yourself. But thank you for tuning in once again, and we'll see you in the next one.
Berlin had become the center of sexual experimentation. It also became the center of scientific research into sex, led by a pioneering doctor.
Long before Kinsey or Masters and Johnson, there was one German who is credited with inventing the whole notion of sexology or sexual science. And this was a very funny character called Papa, or the Einstein of sex in Berlin. It was Magnus Hirschfeld. Hirschfeld was a queer, Jewish, social democrat, and a great liberal who really defined the liberal spirit of Berlin. It was said that Hirschfeld had only slept with one woman in his life, and that was the most glamorous and decadent, who was Anita Berber.
In 1919, Hirschfeld and Anita Berber appeared in a German silent film called Different from the Others. It's the story of a homosexual violinist who's being blackmailed. This was the first movie in history to portray homosexuality so openly and so sympathetically. The film ends with Magnus Hirschfeld pleading for the rights of homosexuals. The crusading doctor for sexual freedom was also the founder of the world's first institute devoted to the scientific study